Not many people remember that the 1963 March on Washington was officially named the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Indeed, the theme of job creation runs through the writings of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Not just job creation in general, but specifically a government-funded job guarantee. In an article published in Look magazine just after his assassination, Dr. King wrote that, "We call our demonstration a campaign for jobs and income because we feel that the economic question is the most crucial that Black people and poor people generally are confronting." There is a literal depression in the African American community. When you have mass unemployment in the African American community, it's called a social problem. When you have mass unemployment in the white community, it's called a depression. The fact is, there is a major depression in the African American community. The unemployment rate is extremely high, and among African American youth, it goes up as high as 40% in some cities. Nearly 50 years after these words were written, yet another generation has witnessed the inability of a booming economy to provide gainful employment for every person willing and able to work, a point well understood by Dr. King. Economic expansion alone cannot do the job of improving the employment situation of African Americans. It provides the base for improvement, but other things must be constructed upon it, especially if the tragic situation of youth is to be solved. In a booming economy, African American youth are afflicted with unemployment as though in an economic crisis. They are the explosive outsiders of the American expansion. As politicians and media figures laud the relatively lower aggregate unemployment rates, more careful observers note the hidden unemployment that the official numbers do not account for and caution the optimists that official unemployment figures go down not only when the unemployed find work, but also when discouraged workers drop out of the labor force. Those in prison are also disproportionately young, Black, and male, and are not included in official unemployment figures. In addressing these tremendous challenges, Dr. King's writings have a laser-like focus on job creation as addressing multiple concerns and carrying multiple benefits. The nation will also have to find the answer to full employment, including a more imaginative approach than has yet been conceived for neutralizing the perils of automation. Today, as the skilled and semi-skilled African American attempts to mount the ladder of economic security, he finds himself in competition with the white working man at the very time when automation is scrapping 40,000 jobs a week. Though this is perhaps the inevitable product of social and economic upheaval, it is an intolerable situation, and African Americans will not long permit themselves to be pitted against white workers for an ever-decreasing supply of jobs. The energetic and creative expansion of work opportunities in both the public and private sectors of our economy is an imperative worthy of the richest nation on earth, whose abundance is an embarrassment as long as millions of poor are imprisoned and constantly self-renewed within an expanding population. Dr. King reiterated over and over again his proposal that government become an employer of last resort. We need an economic bill of rights. This would guarantee a job to all people who want to work and are able to work. It would mean creating certain public service jobs. We must develop a federal program of public works, retraining, and jobs for all so that none, white or Black, will have cause to feel threatened. At the present time, thousands of jobs a week are disappearing in the wake of automation and other production efficiency techniques. Dr. King's proposal was that anyone ready and willing to work would be assured a public service job. His vision thus extended to all those left behind, including unemployed and poor whites. While African Americans form the vast majority of America's disadvantaged, there are millions of white poor who would also benefit from such a bill. The moral justification for special measures for African Americans is rooted in the robberies inherent in the institution of slavery. Many poor whites, however, were the derivative victims of slavery. As long as labor was cheapened by the involuntary servitude of the black man, the freedom of white labor, especially in the South, was little more than a myth. It was free only to bargain from the depressed base imposed by slavery upon the whole of the labor market. Nor did this derivative bondage end when formal slavery gave way to de facto slavery of discrimination. To this day, the white poor also suffer deprivation and the humiliation of poverty, if not of color. They are chained by the weight of discrimination, though its badge of degradation does not mark them. It corrupts their lives, frustrates their opportunities, and withers their education. In one sense, it is more evil for them because it has confused so many by prejudice that they have supported their own oppressors. Black and white, we will all be harmed unless something grand and imaginative is done. The unemployed, poverty-stricken white man must be made to realize that he is in the very same boat with the African American. Together they could exert massive pressure on the government to get jobs for all. Together they could form a grand alliance. Together they could merge all people for the good of all. Dr. King clearly distinguished a job guarantee from training programs. Too often, he wrote, training becomes a way of avoiding the issue of unemployment. The orientation should be jobs first, training later. Unfortunately, the jobs policy of the federal programs has largely been the reverse, with the result that people are being trained for non-existent jobs. While the development of skills and supportive educational experiences are important characteristics of a job guarantee program, the jobs should nevertheless be jobs and understood as such, not given the false label of training. For Dr. King, a job guarantee program is capable of reconciling these various requirements as conceived around the idea that new forms of work that enhance the social good will have to be devised for those for whom traditional jobs are not available. In Where Do We Go From Here, Dr. King elaborated his vision of a job guarantee program. First, development of skills and education are outcomes, not prerequisites of the program. Second, the jobs are producing community and public services that are in short supply and that benefit the neediest communities. Third, the program generates incomes for individuals and families that have unmet needs. Fourth, there are numerous social psychological benefits for individuals, families, communities, and the nation. The big new attractive thrust of African American employment is in the non-professional services. A high percentage of these jobs are in public employment. The human services, medical attention, social services, neighborhood amenities of various kinds are in scarce supply in this country, especially in localities of poverty. The traditional way of providing manpower for these jobs, degree-granting programs, cannot fill all the niches that are opening up. The traditional job requirements are a barrier to attaining an adequate supply of personnel, especially if the number of jobs expands to meet existing need. The expansion of human services can be the missing industry that will soak up the unemployment that persists in the United States. It can be the missing industry that would change the employment scene in America. The expansion of human services is that industry. It is labor-intensive, requiring manpower immediately rather than heavy capital investment as in construction or other fields. It fills a great need not met by private enterprise. It involves labor that can be trained and developed on the job. The growth of the human services should be rapid, should be developed in a manner ensuring that the jobs will be generated not primarily for professionals with college and postgraduate diplomas, but for people from the neighborhoods who can perform important functions for their neighbors. As with private enterprise, rigid credentials have monopolized the entry routes into human services employment. But less educated people can do many of these tasks now performed by the highly educated, as well as many other new and necessary tasks. A job guarantee provides the framework for income maintenance, skill development, and community service provisioning. Dr. King also believed that it could support goals in other areas, such as housing and education. Work of this sort could be enormously increased, and we are likely to find that the problems of housing and education, instead of preceding the elimination of poverty, will themselves be affected if poverty is first abolished. The poor transformed into purchasers will do a great deal on their own to alter housing decay. Health and child care are other areas where a job guarantee program may serve as a vehicle for progressive social policies. If the wage benefits package includes medical coverage and child care, not only would this guarantee workers and their families coverage, but it could also pressure firms in the private sector to match such benefits. Failure to do so could leave firms unable to attract workers to their places of employment. Individuals develop skills and work habits and provide community service, with the effects reverberating throughout the social fabric of society. The benefits of a job guarantee are potentially widespread and all-pervasive. Beyond these advantages, a host of positive psychological changes inevitably will result from widespread economic security. The dignity of the individual will flourish when the decisions concerning his life are in his own hands, when he has the means to seek self-improvement. Personal conflicts will diminish when the unjust measurement of human worth on a scale of dollars is eliminated. I am positive, moreover, that the money spent would be more than amply justified by the benefits that would accrue to the nation through the spectacular decline in school dropouts, family breakups, crime rates, swollen relief rolls, rioting, and other social evils. Of course, Dr. King recognized that a job guarantee could not take the place of all social programs. He therefore supported comprehensive legislation that would guarantee an income to all who are not able to work. Some people are too young, some are too old, some are physically disabled, and yet in order to live, they need an income. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. supported a job guarantee throughout his life. It was a concrete part of his dream, but he did not view it as utopian or overly idealistic. This country has the resources to solve any problem once that problem is accepted as national policy. By supporting the provision of community services, it raises the possibility of rebuilding America so that private affluence is not accompanied by public squalor of slums and distress. In 1963, Dr. King wrote, "I would challenge skeptics to give such a bold new approach a test for the next decade." Unfortunately, we know we did not face up his challenge at that time, but it is not too late to take up that challenge now as we enter the new millennium. What better way to celebrate the dream and the vision of Dr. King.